Today's talk is titled Pure and Flawless Joy, to be delivered by Randy Schwalbe. Randy has a long storied history. After graduating from UCLA with a Bachelor of Arts degree in music education, he spent 3 years as a band director at Los Altos High School near Stanford University. Then Randy made a natural career move into the aerospace industry, spending the next 30 years as the lean guy at Boeing Satellites, teaching anyone who would listen on how to save money building the Lamborghinis of satellites. He also led a double life, directing and conducting musicals in the Southern California area, then here in Cambria, after he retired in 2012. Here for our UU community, Randy also serves as the worship committee chair and on the AV team. That's audio-visual. Welcome, Randy. He wrote that himself, you can tell.
Good morning. Here we stand at the threshold of another year past, poised to embark on yet another trip around the sun for the 4,542,308,943rd time. But who's counting? This is generally a time for reflection, reminiscing about all the folly of this near-complete orbit while anticipating God knows what for the upcoming cycle. So I thought this would be an appropriate opportunity to share a perspective of one of the most basic of human emotions, joy. Now I could lull you into a mindless state of bliss and with endless quotes about joy and happiness, but I just might do that. No. Instead, I will make a play for your consideration. Okay, I know that most of you have heard and or discussed happiness versus joy. I will briefly review the parameters of both just to set the stage for my assertions. Cutting to the chase, I will paraphrase AI's response to my comparison request. First, happiness is derived from external situations, events, or from external pleasure. Its effect is temporary, fleeting emotion, often a spontaneous response to an event. Happiness is usually not around during difficult times. If there are no objections, I'll move on. Joy, on the other hand, has internal origins derived from meaning, purpose, and values. It is not only long-lasting, joy is an enduring state of being. Joy is cultivated through inner work, connection, and gratitude. And I want you to earmark the word connection for later. With all that said, AI concludes that in essence, while happiness is a wonderful reaction to good fortune, joy is a more fundamental and resilient way of being that provides lasting fulfillment regardless of external circumstances. Before I move on with the core theme of this talk, I wish to take exception to Mr. AI's conclusion here. The filling alone is not an apple pie. The crust alone is not an apple pie. Each is yummy, but together they make an apple pie. One does not beget the other, nor is one superior to the other. I contend it's happiness and joy, not happiness versus joy. So please do not ever feel inferior or second-rate if you experience a sudden urge of happiness. Enjoy it, relish it. Happiness was important enough for Mr. Thomas Jefferson to have included it in the first draft of the Continental Congress's Declaration of Independence. And I quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." So, how would it have read if Jefferson instead wrote joy? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of joy. You know, it's a curious thought. Did you notice the AI failed to mention anything about pursuing? Yet we are all familiar and comfortable with the phrase, the pursuit of happiness. So it seems we have the ability and permission, thanks to Jefferson, to chase after happiness. But this notion is nowhere to be found on this chart. Maybe by inference, we can apply pursuit when considering the origin of happiness is external in nature. You know, there is something tangible out there to pursue. This is not a very convincing argument in that one can pursue something internal as well. Which brings me to one of my premise points. Is there such a thing as pursuing joy? Author and op-ed columnist for the New York Times, David Brooks, says in so many words, there is not. And I quote, "Our public conversation is muddled about the definition of a good life. Often we say a good life is a happy life. We live, as it says in our founding document, in pursuit of happiness. Joy tends to involve some transcendence of self. It's when the skin barrier between you and some other person or entity fades away and you feel fused together. Joy is present when mother and baby are gazing adoringly into each other's eyes, or when a hiker is overwhelmed by beauty in the woods and feels at one with nature. Happiness is what we aim for on the first mountain. Joy is a byproduct of living on the second mountain. We can help create happiness, but we are seized by joy. We are pleased with happiness, but we are transformed by joy." What I just read is an excerpt from the introduction to Mr. Brooks' bestseller, The Second Mountain, The Quest for a Moral Life. Jan recommended this book to me for consideration. It was worth the read. Brooks uses mountains as a metaphor for the profile of a person's life journeys. He establishes the notion that we all have the potential to experience these two mountains. Achievement is the best one-word characterization of your first mountain. You set goals and expectations that you strive to achieve or experience. You passed the bar exam. You landed the job you had set your sights on. Your favorite NFL team wins the Super Bowl. You watch a great movie with your friends. You were duly elected as UUCC's 7th president. Go Don. Or you host a delightful potluck at your home on Christmas Day. Thanks, Art. All the events on the first mountain, according to Brooks, share one common element. When succeeding or experiencing, happiness occurs. Further, all of the events on the first mountain can be pursued, hence the pursuit of happiness. You make a conscious effort to seek these events and ultimately to seek the happiness that is the byproduct of success or a positive experience. On the other hand, the second mountain comes to you. The second mountain finds you. Fulfillment is the best one-word characterization of the second mountain. Your spiritual journey, the interconnectedness with your family, friends, community, and nature, meditation, and an awareness of your place in the world are all paths on the second mountain. And this mountain is enveloped by a shroud called joy. To be clear, these paths are not intended to be traversed, going from point A to point B. Mostly, you just exist on these paths. Further, the second mountain finds you. Case in point, a typical UUCC Sunday morning service Throughout this service, there are moments when we as individuals and collectively recognize the joy in our lives. From the opening words, lighting the chalice, affirming a pledge to be a community, sharing our joys along with concerns, and being led into an all too brief meditative silence, singing together, and even listening and absorbing the message from our speakers, provided they speak slowly and clearly. And remember that I had asked you to retain attention to one of the words that defines joy? What was that word? Yes, connection. Very good. This is what we do here each Sunday to get connected and stay connected. Our fellowship, if it is still okay to use that word, is, in my opinion, the greatest source of joy here in the UU community of Cambria. But you may be wondering, hey, Randy, what is that disagreement with David Brooks' assertion about joy?
Well, what about it, Randy?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. And thanks for keeping me on point, Julia. Okay, Mr. Brooks asserts that one does not seek joy. Joy, the second boundary, finds you. And I assert that it is possible and probable that we can pursue joy as well. After all, you all chose to be here this morning, and outside of this talk itself, you knew close to 90% of what would take place. So your motivation was not merely a quest for discovery. Now, don't get me wrong, we do share many happy moments throughout the morning together, greeting each other when we first come in, sharing small talk, responding to something humorous during a talk, having a good-natured chuckle when a raw messes up an enunciation. But the underlying energy that motivated us to come here was not the pursuit of some good laughs, but the joy of being connected. However, the joy we seek and feel is often accompanied by happiness, which is one of the reasons these two concepts are widely referenced interchangeably. Another reason for this interchangeability is based on the three sources of happiness. Three sources of happiness. The first, pure pleasure, involving activities that are pleasant but not challenging or meaningful, like laughing at a joke, eating chocolate, walking in the sunshine, a good memory, reading, swimming in the ocean, listening to music, anything that feels good in the moment. The second is pure challenge, the sense of accomplishment we get after we did something that requires us to use our skills to solve a problem or achieve an objective. Exercising, job interviews, digging ditches, climbing 4,000 feet to the 14,000-foot summit on the Inca Trail known as Dead Woman's Pass. You may not always feel happiness during the activity, but you feel intense satisfaction afterwards. And finally, pure meaning. Any activity that we consider to be worthwhile that has a greater purpose, contributing to a social cause, working to pay the bills, helping your neighbor, advancing your education in order to achieve your dream job, generally improving yourself. Parents will probably do quite a few activities in a purely meaningful category, stuff like changing diapers, spending all their money on their babies, and getting up in the middle of the night. These activities are not necessarily difficult to do and often not pleasant, but they have a higher purpose. And naturally, many countless activities employ a combination of these happiness sources. For examples, combining pleasure and challenge, playing tennis or basketball, combining challenge and meaning, handing out food every fourth Tuesday in San Simeon, cleaning portions of Highway 1 and 46, and combining meaning and pleasure, an activity that is fun and serves a higher cause, like pulling an all-nighter to finish a school project that is really fun to work on, or my writing this sermon. Finally, when all three sources of happiness are combined, pleasure, challenge, and meaning, we get this thing called joy. Graduating college, raising a family, making this UU community function and thrive. Now let's venture into this phrase, pure and flawless joy. It is a derivative of the phrase penned by a young diarist in London named Diana in the fall of 1940 during bombing raids by the German Luftwaffe, the Nazis' Air Force. Eric Larson quoted her diary entry in his book, The Splendid and the Vile, a bestseller about Winston Churchill's leadership during the height of World War II and the fearless optimism he instilled in the public consciousness that England will stand forever. In chapter 51, Larson quotes several professional diarists of their accounts during a nighttime bombing raid over London in the early fall of 1940. At one point, and this is the quote, at one point, mass observationist and diarist Olivia Cockett and a friend Peg went for a stroll during an air raid. Walked out into the light of the full moon, Cockett wrote. We're so thrilled with its beauty. We walked to Brixton through gunfire and all, admiring the effects of shadow and light, and liking the empty quiet of the streets. As Peg said, the war and the guns did seem trivial, essentially frivolous, against the solemn splendor. Another diarist, also a young woman named Diana, described her own surprise at how she felt while lying in bed after a near miss by a bomb. I lay there feeling indescribably happy and triumphant, she wrote. I've been bombed. I kept saying to myself over and over again, trying the phrase on like a new dress to see how it fit. I've been bombed. I've been bombed. Me. Many people had probably been killed or wounded during the raid, she acknowledged, but never in my whole life have I ever experienced such pure and flawless happiness. Just an aside here, the vile in the title of the book refers to the incessant aggression of the Third Reich in its quest to conquer Europe and beyond. The splendid refers to that fearless optimism of the English that so frustrated Hitler, who initially thought England was a soft target. So just what was the insight behind this remarkable quote, pure and flawless happiness? The feeling that overcame Diana when she wrote this entry may have been the result of the naked realization that imminent death and the electric intensity of life itself were positioned side by side, and life was prevailing at that very moment. It was as though the close proximity of death brightly illuminated the very essence of life itself. Let me repeat that. It was as though the close proximity of death brightly illuminated the very essence of life itself. So let me illustrate what I mean by this. Imagine in this day and age, getting up every morning, eating breakfast with the kids, and then head off safely to work. Death could not be further from your mind. Actually, I meant to say farther from your mind. Now imagine the normal life of a Londoner in 1940, suddenly changing when the air raids began, feeling the breath of death razor close. But instead of dread and fear, Diana was feeling arguably the most exquisite sense of joy, pure and flawless. Oh, and I must confess, we're not at the finish line yet. There was one more aspect of joy I would be remiss if I did not share it with you presently. Perfect joy. Bear with me. Perfect joy has nothing to do with Brooks's second mountain or the happiness triangle of pleasure, challenge, and meaning. No, the denizens of the UU fourth source, Jewish and Christian teachings, along with Hinduism, have co-opted this phrase. Paraphrasing St. Francis of Assisi during the early 13th century, perfect joy is an internal state of peace and contentment rooted in one's relationship with God. It is discovered in the midst of trials and adversity and humiliation, not in their absence. This perspective views suffering as an opportunity to conform oneself to Christ's own suffering. True joy comes from overcoming oneself and accepting a little portion of God's plan, rather than seeking personal glory or success. The ability to find joy in such circumstances is considered a grace and gift of the Holy Spirit, in which one can truly glory, unlike worthy achievements. And I will add more specifically how these three major religions define perfect joy. Here goes. Christianity on perfect joy, an abiding state of blessedness, comfort, and peace from knowing Christ, even in tribulation, aka great suffering. Hinduism on perfect joy, profound happiness from divine communion, cessation of desires, and deeper understanding. Judaism on perfect joy, a meaningful form of devotion and worship, calling for joyful praise. When said and done, it seems the major religious communities of the West and East have conspired to sublet that second mountain, finding ways to steer you away from, well, you. Back in the summer of 1785, a German poet, playwright, and historian named Friedrich Schiller penned a poem titled An die Freude, an ode to joy. The verses speak of a higher power, with joy acting as a spark connecting humanity to the divine. And I contend that Schiller's ode best captures the essence of a pure and flawless joy. Transcending the ecclesial variant discussed earlier as perfect joy, it celebrates universal brotherhood and sisterhood and joy among humanity. Joy is drunk by every being from kind nature's flowing breast, every evil, every good thing for her rosy footprint quests. Be embraced, ye millions yonder, mankind over the stars unfurled. There resides a loving spirit. Take this kiss throughout the world. The core premise is that all people, regardless of background, can come together in joy and friendship. Ode to Joy is a powerful expression of longing for freedom and a peaceful world, a powerful declaration of hope over despair, a triumph of the spirit. A contemporary of Schiller's, named Ludwig von Beethoven, incorporated portions of the Ode to Joy as lyrics for an unconventional chorus in the fourth movement of a symphony, his ninth. When listening to this movement live, typically performed by 200 people or more on stage, one can readily grasp the message and the feeling of the celebration and the pure joy associated with universal brotherhood. The core theme is that all people, regardless of background, can come together in joy and friendship. Oh, I already did that. And to take this step, a step further into the realm of the eco-mystical, that's believing only what your five senses can perceive, the meaning of life is simply being a part of an intelligent species exclusive in this known universe. That, dear ones, is the very essence of pure and flawless joy. Let me illustrate. Imagine a technology that enables you to hold a Zoom meeting with every living person on this planet simultaneously. There you are sitting in front of a very, very large computer monitor with over 8.2 billion people gazing back at you. You have the attention of the entire population of the earth. You are now fully connected with all of humanity. This is your moment. The pure and flawless joy is now real. Full stop. You smile and say, "Hello, world. I wish for you peace, liberty, and justice for all." We practice this connection on a much smaller scale every Sunday at 10 a.m. So here goes. Hello, Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. May joy and happiness be with you always.